Hey, and welcome to another data structures video. Today we'll be going over arrays and how to code them in Java. Arrays are a fundamental data structure used in many aspects of programming, so it's important to understand the basics of arrays. We will also be going over the arrays class that Java provides for us because it gives us useful methods for array manipulation. Let's get started. Okay, well, let's get started and create the Java class lesson arrays. Inside of here, we'll go and create our public static main method. So public static void main string array args. Okay, there are going to be times where you have a common task, such as storing a sequence of numbers, high scores, maybe some medical information, or accounting numbers. Well, we can declare and initialize 10 variables for, say, 10 high scores. And it wouldn't be much of a task, right? So I can do something like this. I have 10 different variables. Each of them have a high score. Well, what if I told you that we want to store 1,000 high scores? That would be different because now we have 1,000 lines of code. Each is a variable holding a single value. This is very cumbersome and will take way long to do and just sounds kind of ridiculous, right? Well, this is where arrays can come in and help you. Instead of having 10 hard-coded variables, we can have one single variable. Okay, now in Java, when we declare a variable as an array, it's considered a reference type and treated as an object, something that you should know. So let's go ahead and create an array and initialize it with some high scores. So there are two ways to create an array. Let's go with the kind of less common way. So we'll say int, and to denote it as array, you need square brackets. Let's call this numbers, and we're going to say equals. You're going to have these curly braces right here, okay? So within these curly braces, we actually just initialized the array of size 0. There's literally nothing in this array. So we give it type literals here. They have to be integers because we already defined the data type. So we can say 3, 5, 99, 75, 60, 65, 33, and one more, let's say 41. Okay, so what we just did, we created an array called numbers that's data type int and is a size of 7 because we have 7 different numbers inside these curly braces. Now, once you create and initialize the array, whatever the size is, that can't change. It will always stay that way. Okay, we can't increase the size to say 15. We can't decrease it to 3. The only way you can do that is if you created a new array and then copied the contents of this array into that new one, and that new array had more space, but that's a workaround, and that's not how arrays work, okay? I mean, you can do that, and that is a valid thing to do, but just know that once you create the array, initialize it, the size cannot change. All right, so that's the first way to do that. So the second way is it starts out the same. We have data type int with the square brackets to denote it as an array. We'll say random numbers, and we'll say equals new, and then int braces or brackets, and then a semicolon. However, we're not done because within inside the second pair of brackets, we need to tell it what the size is. So let's just say 10. Okay. So now we have a random numbers array with a size of 10. Something that happens in Java is, see, we have not given it any values yet. However, Java will give us default values. So for any kind of numeric array, it will give every index within this array a value of 0. I'll get to what indexes are in a second. If you created a string array equals new string, let's say 5, it's going to set every string in here to a default of null because a string is like a reference type. And if we did Boolean array, create a Boolean array equals new Boolean, let's say 2, then it's going to set the default values to false. So if we printed all 2 values in this Boolean array, they're both going to be false until we say otherwise. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is hard code some numbers into the random numbers array because I want to access certain indexes so you understand what they are. So if I say random numbers and we give it the curly braces, and the index of an array always starts at 0. Okay, so there's 10 values inside this random numbers array, but the first index where the value is stored is at 0. But let's say the highest score here is 897. Okay, then let's say the index of 4 is equal to just 13. And because the first index starts at 0 and there's 10 values, that means that the last index in an array is the size of the array minus 1. So here, the size of the array is 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. So the last index is 9. Anywhere there's a value in an array, that's called an element of that array. Okay, and then each element can be accessed through its index. Its index is the location in the array. All right, so at location 4 or index 4, we store the value 13. All right, but I said there's gonna be random numbers. And right now what I'm doing is I'm kind of hard coding numbers into the array. So instead, let's create a for loop because this is a very common way to iterate through and insert numbers into or any data type into an array. So we'll start at 0, and we say I is less than random numbers that length, because this is the size. When we access the length of the array, we're basically saying this is the size. So I is less than 10 in this case. Say I plus plus. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to have to access each index. So we'll say random numbers, square bracket of I. I is initially 0. It's going to go all the way through 9. So for each one, we're going to say random dot, whoop, I forgot one thing. I apologize. We need to import the random class equals new random as a random dot next int. We want to be 1 through 100, so you'll say 100 and add 1 so it doesn't count 0. Okay, so next thing we want to do is I'm going to keep this kind of simple for the printout. Again, to access all of them, I'm going to print them out. Have another for loop. If you haven't done this very much or you're kind of new to this, this is common practice and just repetition will help you understand this. Just keep doing this, okay? That's how you're going to get good at coding. So when I run this, what it's going to do is we're giving 10 random numbers to the random numbers array, and then we're printing them out. And I had these vertical bars, so it kind of makes sense about the indexes. So 29 is at index 0, 86 is index 1, and 13 is at index 9. Okay, the element here stores the value 13, but it's accessed through its index. All right, so now there's something that you need to understand, and that is an error. Okay, you will come across a lot of errors when you code, whether you're beginner or professional. All right, so especially as a beginner, you need to understand them. Now, a common error with arrays is called an arrays out of bounds exception. So what does that mean? Well, kind of by the name, when out of bounds, what that's saying is if we try to access something in the array that that's not within the range of the size of the array. So for instance, if I were to say I want to print out random numbers with the index 25. Remember, the size is only 10, and we're trying to access an index of 25. So if I run this, I should get an index out of bounds exception. And here it is, okay? So this is all this is saying. What this means is that I tried to access an array, an index of an array that doesn't exist. Okay, because remember, the size doesn't change. So if it's not between 0 and 9, we're going to get this exception. So whenever you get this, just understand, go back through your code, and somewhere you're trying to access an index and array that just simply doesn't exist. Okay? If you get a chance, like this video and leave a comment or a question that you have down below about it, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Now, let's get to some array manipulation. Okay, so now let's do some array manipulation, and let's start out with the parallel sort. So how do we even access the class? Well, all you have to do is say arrays dot, and then it comes up with all the functions here. So parallel sort. So as you can see, it takes in an array, all these types of arrays, random numbers, and what we just did was we sorted all of the numbers. Parallel sort was introduced in Java 1.8, and before that, I think it was Tim sort. But this is just an efficient way of sorting. Okay, so now if we just copy this print method, come down here, And what you're going to see is the top line of numbers will be the randomly generated ones, and the one down here below it is going to be the sorted numbers. The next one is we can print an array as a string. So if we say string array converted to string equals arrays, again, just accessing the class, dot to string, and as you can see here, it takes in any of the primitive data type arrays, dot to string, and then what we want to give it is the actual array, so random numbers. So now if we do system.out.println of this converted array, and then run it, we're going to see it's going to be comma separated values. Yep, just right here. Okay, and they're already sorted because we did it above. Now, say we have a huge array, and we want to give it default values. So Java gives it 0. But let's say we don't want 0. Say we want to fill it with like 99 or something. Well, what you can do is you can say arrays.fill, and here it, same thing. It takes in 2 parameters though. The first one is the array, and the second one is what value you want to fill the array in with. So we'll say array fill random numbers, and let's say 99. So let's go get this print method, paste it, and then run this again. And this time, all the values are going to be 99. Okay, so let's just look at some of the other ones real quick. So if we do arrays, view arrays dot, and I'm using IntelliJ, it's going to give you all of the functions or methods that it can be used with the class. So binary search, another sorting method, as list, will convert this to an array list. You can do a compare on 2 arrays, and you can also you can copy the array over to a new one. So as you see here, you can copy with the original array, then give it a new length. What this is doing in the background is it's creating a new array with a different length. So say 25. And then you're taking the original array and copying them into that new one. We're not actually manipulating the original array itself because you can't. You can do certain ranges within the array, and you also see if 2 arrays are equal to each other. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. And again, if there are any questions you have, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.